are we making an assumption with what won't happen to an important member of this Broncos defense? Okay? And the guy I'm talking about is John Franklin Myers. And I think that there is a widely held assumption that JFM is going to be the mouth that doesn't get fed. And I'm not sure about that.
And you're talking about out of Nick Bonito, Zack Allen,
Courtland
Sutton. You was going to say you want to put Courtland in there, and then you have John Franklin Myers that's been very vocal that he wants to get paid, just like Zack Allen wants to get paid, Nick Bonito. And there's a lot of mouths to be fed and not a lot of money to be given out. You're only going to have maybe 2, maybe 3. I don't know with the whole Courtland situation.
Yeah.
Nick Bonito's the youngest one, so we're expecting him to get something done. Even for Zack Allen, they're not young. This is not their first contract. So it's going to be interesting to say, okay, how do you divide the work? Who's more important? Because that's going to tell you a lot. And if Zack Allen gets paid, John Franklin Myers saying, okay, so you don't think that I'm worthy of the contract that you just gave Zack Allen. You don't think that I'm the best fit here, and now you may have some kind of issues going forward during the season.
Correct. And with the John Franklin Myers situation uniquely, I think that you think of the status on the team of Zack Allen and Courtland Sutton, and you say, well, John Franklin Myers will be the guy that he's not going to get paid. And the more I was thinking about this, and it was the thought got sparked by listening to an old school wrestling podcast about there's this guy named Eric Bischoff who used to run WCW. Okay, and he was going to war with another billionaire, Vince McMahon. And he wasn't a billionaire; he was working for Ted Turner, who was a billionaire. And he was talking about constructing a wrestling roster. And he's being asked a question, and he's talking about 30 years ago. And he's asked about this guy who he's not going to make the most money, and he's at the bottom half of the roster. And he's like something you got to realize is like when you're building these wrestling rosters that this guy's making $1 million, this guy's making $700,000, this guy's making 1.3. He's like, oftentimes the guy that is going to make less money and has less of a status on your roster, those are the deals that are easier to get done. And those are
because a lot of times that person knows their place, understands that
Correct.
Hey, I'm not the best of the best.
Yes.
But also I know that this is my value and let's get something done. And it is a lot easier to get it done with somebody that's in the middle than somebody that's sitting here that wants $100 million guaranteed.
Right. And he was talking about a guy that was making $700,000 as opposed to $1.5 million. And he was like, No. He's like, when you have to cut salary, I'm talking about this podcast. He's like, when you have to cut salary, he's like, don't always look for, these guys on the bottom half of the totem pole, cut them. He's like, no, you don't want to cut them. Those are great value deals. And I'm thinking of John Franklin Myers like, wait a second. You think about his status on the team. No, he's not at the top half of the totem pole, I don't think. But John Franklin Myers, I'm going to do the same thing that we did last year with the Benito Cooper pressures from last year. That if you walked around Mile High before a game and said, hey, who had more pressures, Nick Benito or Jonathan Cooper? 9 out of 10 people say
they're going to say
Nick Benito, but it was actually Jonathan Cooper. If I did that same exercise and walked around Mile High and said, hey, who's got more sacks since 2018, John Franklin Myers or Zack Allen?
I would say Zack Allen.
So would I, Phil. But the answer is John Franklin Myers. The guy's got 26.5 sacks since coming in the league in 2018. Zack Allen has 25 sacks since coming in 2019. So just a year apart, very comparable, way closer than people think. And if I had said, hey, who's a guy on the Broncos roster right now that has missed one game in his entire career?
If you're comparing it to Zack Allen or John Franklin Myers, I would say Zack Allen, because he's always out there. He's making these plays. He's reliable. He seems to be a team leader. I would go with Zack Allen.
Me too. John Franklin Myers has missed one game in his entire NFL career. And then you look at last year, Zack Allen, deserving all the praise he's getting, 8.5 sacks. When we have these conversations, it's almost like John Franklin Myers didn't have 7. A sack and a half difference between a guy that we're calling the best D tackle in the sport.
But think of this is, I hope John Franklin Myers is listening to you now, because he's like, thank you. Thank you. This is what someone like JFM is probably bringing to the table when he's talking to George and Sean. He's saying, you guys are not hearing me loud enough. you guys are kind of pushing my head down thinking that Zack Allen is the only one out here doing these type of things. Why? Because Zack Allen may have a bigger voice. We talk about him a lot more because the media talks about him a lot more, because the coaching staff seems to talk about him a lot more.
And he was a prize free agent.
He was a prize free agent, and he came from the system of VJ with the Arizona Cardinals.
Right.
So everything kind of pieces together, and that's why I feel like we sit here today saying, and Zack Allen has done a great job.
Great job.
No, make no mistake about it, a great job. And he deserves his flowers. He deserves to get paid. But we can't sit here and act like John Franklin Myers doesn't deserve to be paid either, because he's doing the exact same things and has the exact kind of similar stats as Zack Allen, and he's a big reason why we're able to have a successful defense last year.
A big part of it. And he is not getting, like, when you take a step back and look at his career, I'm not saying it's the same as Zack Allen. He's the same player. Man, but he's a lot closer than people like, and I'm seeing right now on the RamosLaw.com text line, Bob in Littleton says JFM should be the mouth that gets left empty with about 5 different exclamation points.
Why?
And I would just say why?
Like,
why?
yeah.
And think about this. I pulled up his market value. Okay. Now, it may not be to the exact dollar. It's a projection. Okay. But his market value on SpotRack is 3 years, $25 million. That's an annual average value of $8.5 million for an interior defensive lineman who was just had his best career year or his career year.
He's not 30 yet.
He's not.
He's 28 going on 29.
So why do we talk about him like he is like some
because
second-class
he wasn't
citizen?
A prize, like you said, a prize free agent. That someone like George did a great job of acquiring him via trade.
Yeah, Jets couldn't pay for him. Couldn't afford him.
It was like a 6th or 7th round draft pick.
Yes,
so now we look at it like, okay, if you're willing to give up John Franklin Myers, if you're the Jets, for a 7th round draft pick, is he really that good? But then he steps foot into the building. He has done well for the Denver Broncos. He has bought into the culture, and he brings some kind of energy that Zack Allen doesn't necessarily have as well. They pair together well, which that's why they have a great tandem together, and that's why they're able to get the pressure like they do, because they're on the same page.
Yeah.
But when it comes to saying, hey, Zack Allen's not that much better than me, I agree with you, Zach. It's like for John Franklin Myers, he wants to get paid too, and that's why he's so vocal.
We're talking about John Franklin Myers, and you were about to go through a little exercise here with us, and let's do that.
Yeah, it's if you, Zach Bye, was the general manager of the Denver Broncos, and you were comparing them, because you're going to pay one of them. Now, maybe you pay both, but let's just say in this exercise, you pay one of them. One's out. When you're comparing the two to decide who you're going to keep, these are some of the things you have to keep in mind. Like this is what some of the general managers, they think in their head when they're in a group setting at a table discussing who they're going to pay.
Sure.
And one of them is, okay, who's a better fit for Vance Joseph's scheme moving forward? That's one of the biggest questions right now.
And when you say who are you talking about?
Between John Franklin Myers and Zack Allen. Although both of them
they're both great fits,
play well,
man.
but you take one out of the mix, who's still going to thrive?
I would say if you force me to decide, Zack Allen, I think is a better fit. Is a better fit in this defense. And that's, again, that doesn't – I don't want it to take away from John Franklin Myers. The guy just had 7 sacks as an interior defensive lineman.
But it also matters because for VJ, who's sitting at the table as well, who is he going to pound the table for?
I think it'd be Zack Allen.
Exactly, because it's like, hey, I know Zach. I'm familiar with him. He's been in the system. He's doing well. Like, let's keep that going. And although you like John Franklin Myers, you don't have a relationship like you would with Zack Allen if you're VJ. These are some of the things that help you stay in the league, help you stay on the football team, is building the relationships and having a familiar coach's face that say, hey, I like that guy. Let's keep him around.
And he's my guy.
Exactly.
That's
he's my guy.
Yeah.
And we're doing well. And we're top 5, and we could probably be number 1 this year. And Zack Allen's a big reason why. All right, you start to put those together. The next question is, when it comes to the locker room, who you believe is a better fit? Who do you believe that people go to and turn to talk to, and they're more comfortable around, that you know is going to be very consistent all the time? Now, of course, we don't know both these guys.
Yeah, speculating. I would say Zack Allen.
Okay, and I've heard people in the locker room say, hey, Zack Allen has a really good personality. He's always talking to guys in the lunchroom. He's sitting with guys. These are a couple of people that are in the trenches all the time with Zack Allen and John Franklin Myers. Not saying John Franklin Myers is a bad guy because he's not. He's actually a really good guy.
Yep.
But Zack Allen, he just brings a different aura. He's confident because he feels like he's the leader of that defense.
Totally.
Especially when it comes to defense alignment.
Totally.
The next question would become, who has more upside? This is a big one because both of them are around 20.
Yeah.
So you have JFM that's 28, getting ready to be 29. Zack Allen, who's 27. So you had John Franklin Myers that got to the league 2019 or 18, and Zack Allen was 2019.
Yep. I mean,
it's just a big contract, no matter what.
More upside, I would still say Zack Allen. I think like Zack Allen is just in a different, like just a notch above John Franklin Myers' classification, I think, as a football player. But that also could make and this is part of what I'm talking about, why I wanted to bring this up. Part of why John Franklin Myers would be easier to get done. Like Cooper and Benito, right? Both looking for paydays. Who got their payday first? Jonathan Cooper. Cooper's deal is easier to do than Benito's. And I think that John Franklin Myers, and if you believe that his market value is what a spot rack forecasted to be, 3 years, $25 million,
but
that's an easier deal to get done.
It's an easier deal. But is this when you're assuming that maybe they're going to get both contracts done? What if this
I think it's very possible that both get done.
I don't know. Nick Benito's going to want a lot of money. That's a lot of money tied up in the defense when you paid Nick Benito.
Totally.
You paid Jonathan Cooper already. Okay, you're still paying on someone like Dre Greenlaw, and I know that's not a huge contract, but that's still a lot of money for a veteran. Hafanga's another one that you just paid for in free agency.
Sure.
And so now you have two guys that you really like, but you may be able to only keep one of them. And that's why I keep on asking, who would you pick? And that's why I keep going down the line of certain things that you would pick, because you're saying, hey, Zack Allen's a tick better than John Franklin Myers. Zack Allen's going to want a lot more money than John Franklin Myers because of the awards and his name.
And he just came out at number 90, and we'll talk about him more in dedicated fashion. He just came out, Zack Allen did number 90 on the NFL Top 100, voted on by the players. I'm not saying that they're the same player. But what I am saying is, man, you look at it. John Franklin Myers is a hell of a lot closer to Zack Allen than people talk. Like the tone when John Franklin Myers, JFM has more sacks in his career than Zack Allen. They're 1 year apart. Okay, so I understand there's not exactly shooting at the same basket, but he's got more sacks. He's missed one game his entire career. John Franklin Myers has, and we're talking about a difference a year ago of 8.5 sacks to 7.